Nice.
But so happy to have you. I really appreciate you do this. Obviously on Super Bowl Sunday, we're super excited. The postseason's coming up. And I know you and Jim were collaborating, and just thought it was an amazing idea. Like I said, with the postseason coming up, so I see a bunch of people on there. Super excited, and I know even for myself, I cannot wait to learn. So thank you so much again.
Absolutely. And thank you again for having us, Jody and Jim. Right. So like I said, so my brothers and I, we were in the trenches. We know what it's like being in your shoes and wrestling in the high pressure matches. We know what it's like coming from the bottom up. And I get real excited because this is exactly the kind of thing that I needed and my brothers needed when we were beginning. And like I said, we're using wrestling as a vehicle to build better people, which I think that's what all coaches are really trying to do anyway. And we have a great opportunity in the sport of wrestling. I've been doing this since 2008. At this point in time, we're the #1 wrestling-specific sports psychology company anywhere in the world. And we have a great team that's behind us that's helping us with this. We have just under 100 mindset coaches that work for us. We've worked with the Olympic teams, both men and women. We've worked with dozens of MMA and UFC fighters. We've worked with probably 1/3 of the Division I programs. We work with Vito, Yanni, Shane Van Ness. We worked with Shane since back when he was winning national championships at Blair Academy in high school. Bo Bartlett, a lot of people that you know, our Division II team, St. Cloud State, they're like 6 or 7-time national champions. And of course, we've worked with people outside of the sport of wrestling too. All-Americans, national champs in colleges too, in lacrosse, golf, tennis, archery, cheerleading, you name it. So mindset is mindset, right? Confidence is confidence. And like I said, I get excited because this confidence and learning how to deal with pressure should help you not only winning big wrestling matches, but taking tests in school. As a school psychologist, you hear a lot of parents say, my kid's not very good at taking tests. Well, a lot of that's mental. Or kids struggle with social anxiety, making friends. That's also mental. Confidence and learning how to manage stress absolutely helps that. And then future career, job interview, it's all mindset. And during COVID, when basically wrestling and all sports shut down, we started working with Fortune 500 companies and businesses, Northwestern Mutual, Mass Mutual, their sales team and their management on the mindset, because for them too, how mental it is to succeed in business. So that's why it's super exciting helping the kids with all this. And I could tell you this also, that a lot of those businesses, they were asking me to put them in touch with wrestlers. They wanted to hire wrestlers because they know how hard of workers you are, that you could bounce back from losses, that you know how to dig down deep and make sacrifices and be disciplined. So we really want to make sure we're using this for our entire life. Back when I was at Penn, we had a sports psychologist work with our team, and he asked the question, what percentage of wrestling is physical and what percentage is mental? And our national champ, our 2-time NCAA champ, Matt Valeni, he said 90% mental. And I know if you look at Carrie Colot's website, he said 95% mental. But then when you ask people about their training probably 95 to 100% physical. So in a highly competitive society, and it's only getting more and more competitive, the kids are starting younger. They have, kids get better coaching at a younger age. Social media is everywhere. We didn't have to deal with the pressures of social media when we were younger. It just gets more and more mental. So we need to understand how to bridge that gap between all the training we're doing and making sure we maximize our potential. I've said this time and time again that sooner or later, the guy who knows how to maximize their potential will beat the person with more talent. Maybe not today, maybe not next week, maybe not next year, but over time, that person with more talent will eventually lose to the person who knows how to maximize their potential. So that's what we have to really make sure we're working on. Now, we see the same kind of mental blocks over and over again, and that's giving good opponents too much respect, wrestling better in practice than competition, not having the killer instinct, being a slow starter. Almost all kids say they struggle with that first match. The first match is usually their worst one of a tournament. The difficulty there is that those matches, they're qualifying matches. Those are automatic qualifications as the season goes on. For the NCAAs, that's to see who's going to be an All-American, that first match of the day. So when they take the mat, they need to come out swinging. They need to be ready to go. So, like I said, not having the killer instinct, a lot of kids get in their own head when they know the records, the rankings, the seedings, the predictions. A lot of these kids, and we're getting messages from kids all the time on Instagram, And they're coming to us with a lot of problems you might not even be aware of. A lot of them are struggling with, they're worried about letting their parents down. They're worried about letting their coaches down. They're putting too much pressure on themselves. They're thinking so much about all the hard work they've put in, and they don't want it to go to waste. A lot of these kids are afraid of, maybe they're wasting their parents' money. Wrestling too cautious, too conservative, too hesitant. They need to make sure they have their mind right. And like I said, a lot of them, it's not for the lack of effort. They're doing everything they could physically. And when I spoke about this with Yanni, I was at Cornell in September, October, and he said, before he started working with the mindset coach, he had a plan for his technique. He had a plan for his strength. He had a plan for his nutrition, a plan for his rest and recovery. The one thing he didn't have a plan for was his mindset. And it took a loss in Final X, if you remember, against Nick Lee, for him to realize that he has a problem. And it's not like he had like a real problem in the sense of, hey, he was a good wrestler. He was already a 4-time NCAA champ. He already took a silver medal in the world. So clearly he has an incredibly strong mindset, but he realized there's another level he could take his mindset to. And unfortunately, it took a big loss for him to realize that. And he made the comment to me. He said, I was wrong. Coach Mike Gray at Cornell told him that he should be working with a mindset coach for years, and he just didn't do it until he lost. And the same thing happened with Vito. Vito was, doing really well. And he was a really good wrestler. He was a multiple-time All-American. And then what happened? He lost he beat Pat Glory in the EIWA finals. I think he teched him. He either major decisioned him or teched him. He beat him bad. And then he went into the NCAA semifinals, and I think he got majored by Pat Glory. So that's when he realized, hey, I need to work on my mindset. And it wasn't that he has a bad mindset. It's just he was inconsistent. The key word that all high performers talk about in all sports is consistency. Doesn't matter what sport, right? You want to have consistent performance. I'm sure every one of your kids has wrestled well sometimes and wrestled poorly sometimes. And this is what Vito said. If that's his potential, if that's the gap of his potential, he wants to make sure that his bottom is raised. In other words, if this is his performance, he wants his performance to be in this gap, raise the bottom of that, if that makes sense. So now Vito's a more consistent performer because he started working on his mindset. And all the top teams, they know that. They understand this. The top 3 teams in the NCAA tournament, Penn State last year, Penn State, Iowa, and Cornell. What do all 3 of them have in common? They brought their mindset coach with them to the NCAA tournament. So if you look at those national championship pictures of those top 3 teams, you'll see their sports psychologist with them over there. And now I could tell you this with Cale Sanderson, when he was originally coaching at Iowa State, he was working with the sports psychologist when he was wrestling. He brought that mindset coach with him to Penn State. So he brought her from Iowa State to Penn State because he realized how important the mindset is. Now, again, we work with all sports, but a major advantage, big thing we bring to the table is a wrestling specific program. Everything we do is made by wrestlers, for wrestlers, and carried out by wrestlers. So a lot of wrestlers who come to us, I had a message from a kid the other day on our Instagram page, and the kid's already working with not one, but 2 sports psychologists. And he said they still don't quite understand it because they were never wrestlers. We started working with them, and in just 2 sessions, he's already feeling better because, he feels like he's understood and he's able to open up. And our mindset coaches, they get what he's going through. They've been through it before. They've cut weight before. They've been through the grind of a long season. They've had ups and downs at a tournament. They understand all the pressures, the specific pressures that wrestling brings to the table. And it's one of those things, if you haven't wrestled before, you never quite understand what a wrestler goes through. So like I said, we're absolutely happy to help with that. And we can help with it. So just now it's getting into some of the specifics. Like I said, at this stage of the game, every serious wrestler and every serious athlete needs to be working on their mindset all year round. It's not optional anymore. All the best do it. All sports, like 90% of the pro golfers, Djokovic in tennis talks about this. Tom Brady spoke about that. He worked with a mindset coach when he was at the University of Michigan. They all need to be working on their mindset. So what's the number one question that I hear from parents and from wrestlers? What should I be thinking right before my match? Okay, what should I be telling myself? You need to focus on what you could control. That's what we call, I wrote a book on this called Building the Predator Mindset. And the predator mindset, that's just an analogy. Focus on what you could control, forget about what you can't control. The predator mindset means eyes on the front like to hunt. Predator animals have their eyes in the front of their head. Eyes on the front like to hunt. Prey animals have their eyes on the side of their head. Eyes on the side like to hide. So when we say a predator mindset, that means nothing more than focus on what you could control, forget about what you can't control. So what do you have control over? Three things: your effort, your attitude, and your aggressiveness. Effort, attitude, and aggressiveness. That's directly in your control. Pretty much everything else is outside of your control. So you don't want to focus on it. The reason why a lot of these wrestlers are struggling is because they're thinking about letting down other people, coaches, parents, family, or friends. They're thinking about the magnitude of the tournament. Like, hey, this is sectionals, this is states, this is regionals, this is national championship, this is Olympics. They struggle because they're thinking about how big the event is instead of just treat it like any other competition. I tell all wrestlers, live is live. It's just live, whether it's done in practice or competition. Live wrestling is live wrestling. Don't make it anything special. 9 out of 10 times, if you make a competition special, you're going to do worse. You're probably likely to choke. And not only are you more likely to choke, but you're more likely to underperform. You're more likely to be unhappy. Okay. You look at the Penn State guys. Why do a lot of times do they perform well? They're having fun. Almost every one of the wrestlers talks about this in their interviews. We're having fun. We're having fun. When you're having fun, you become a dangerous wrestler. You're more aggressive. You're more likely to score points. And if you're more likely to score points, you win more. So fun equals more aggressive. Aggressive means scoring more points. Scoring more points usually equates to wins. So we have to be having fun. So we need to remove the obstacles that are making it fun. So as a wrestler, you don't want to be thinking about records, rankings, seedings, or predictions. If you're a parent, definitely don't talk about that with your kids. Parents ask me all the time, what should they be doing right now? What can they do right now to support their kids? Right now, with about a month left in the season, here's my recommendation. I tell everyone the same thing. It's no surprise. When in doubt, don't talk about wrestling. Don't bring up wrestling unless your kid brings it up to you. Now, if you're the coach of the team, that's a different story, right? And I know it's also difficult if you're a parent and you're coaching at the same time. That's a delicate balance. But when in doubt, don't bring up wrestling for the rest of the month unless your kid brings it up to you. If your kid does bring up wrestling to you, keep it short and keep it sweet. The main thing your kid needs to hear from you right now is I love you and I'm proud of you no matter what. I love you no matter what. That's really the answer there. I love you and I'm proud of you no matter what. And you let them, and then just like I said, keep the mood light and fun around the house, because right now these kids are feeling a lot of stress. And the people who are coming into us on Instagram and our email, a lot of these kids, they look like tough guys, but trust me, they're sensitive too. They're coming to us. They're reaching out to us saying they're struggling. So like I said, when in doubt, lay off about wrestling. Obviously, you're still the parent. They still have to do their chores. They still have to do their schoolwork naturally. But we could give them that this month leading up into the state tournament, the national tournament. Also, I know a lot of people are doing NHSCAs. Don't bring up wrestling around the house unless they bring it up to you. If they bring it up, keep it short and sweet. And then for ourselves, don't talk about records, rankings, seedings, predictions, who the other kid is that you're going up against, that your kid's going up against, what happened in the past. Your kid's already thinking about wrestling a lot, so you don't want to bring it up as much at home. I say this, and like I said, there's a lot of parents who take me up on this, and it's one of the greatest ways to help your kids. And then there's a lot of parents who just blow it off, and unfortunately, the kids continue to suffer. If you do that, you give your kid the best chance of succeeding. Keep the mood light and fun around the house because they're already feeling the pressure. Like I said, for the kids, live wrestling is live wrestling. Treat it all the same. Their focus should be on effort, attitude, and aggressiveness. So what does that mean? Concretely, very concretely. And I'm not here to tell anyone how to wrestle. You guys have great technical coaches. My job is to make sure they have a clear mind, and have that clear mind there's 3 positions in wrestling: neutral, top, and bottom. Neutral, they should be thinking about what are their best 2 or 3 takedowns. Get to your tie-up, get to your shot. On top, they should be thinking, what are your 2 or 3 best breakdowns and turns and pinning combinations? Get to those breakdowns, get to those turns and pins. On bottom, what should they be thinking? What are their 2 or 3 best escapes or reversals? And then you do that. Keep it very simple. Our goal is not to help we don't want the wrestlers thinking more. We want them thinking less. And more importantly, we want them to think right. So in their mind, they should be, when they're on neutral, best 2 or 3 moves. When they're on top, best 2 or 3 moves. When they're on bottom, best 2 or 3 moves. That's their focus. A lot of times kids get caught up thinking about what's my opponent going to do to me? That's prey mindset, right? That's outside of our control, what our opponent's going to do to us. Be very careful about scouting. There are some kids that scouting helps. For every 1 kid that scouting helps, I've seen it hurt 20. When we worked with the Olympic team back in 2016, we circled back with one of the wrestlers who was multiple-time national champion, and he lost his first round of the Olympics. He said he was more physically and technically ready for the 2016 Olympics than any competition in his life. He said what held him back was when he stepped on the line, all he could think of was the move that his opponent was going to do to him. This was a Greco wrestler. So the Greco wrestler was thinking, watch his headlock, watch his headlock, watch his headlock. That's outside of his control. So that's prey mindset. And what happened, he wound up losing that match, and that was it for his Olympic run because he was focused on what his opponent was doing. Instead, he should have stepped on the line and focused on what he could control. What is his best attack? Focus on his 2 or 3 best attacks. That's what your kid should do as well. So keeping that mindset, neutral, top, bottom, best 2 or 3 moves. And then if you catch your mind drifting, you shouldn't be thinking too much about the score, shouldn't be thinking too much about the time on the clock. These are things that don't go on in a kid's mind in practice. When you're in practice, if your kid's a practice room wrestler, it means they're running a different mental pattern in matches. Hold on. If your kid's wrestling better in practice than they are in a match, it's because they have negative mental patterns going on in a match. So we need to identify the negative mental patterns, break the negative mental patterns, and create positive mental patterns. Right? If your kid's underperforming, if your kid's wrestling better in practice, if they're losing to guys they should beat, the only thing it could be, if they're capable of doing it, is they're running a negative mental pattern. So like I said, we have to first identify the pattern, break the pattern, and create a positive mental pattern. And a lot of times they're telling themselves something different. They're trying to beat the guy in practice, but they're not thinking about the time, the score, who's watching, the significance of the event, what their partner might do. They're just wrestling. So that's exactly how we want them to wrestle in a match. Focus on your effort, your attitude, and your aggressiveness. That gives you the best chance of winning, and you're more likely to have fun. I can't tell you how many times guys are saying they're getting real tired in their matches because they're playing defense. They're trying to manage the score. They're trying to manage the clock. They're trying to manage the match. They're not doing any of that in practice. So to be successful, you need to everyone's heard this before, practice the way you want to play, right? And I get it. You don't play wrestling, you wrestle. But they need to make matches similar to practice and make practices similar to a match. So what does that mean? When you're in practice, you need to really, your wrestlers need to really think about, I'm ready to wrestle. I spoke to Quentin Wright about this, who's a 2-time NCAA champ from Penn State. And he said that when he was in practice, he would really put himself in the match mentally. He would really imagine he's down by a point with 30 seconds left in the NCAA finals. He really made practice like a match. The other way you make practice like a match is when your kid is going live. Strongly recommended. We tell our wrestlers they should be wrestling live in a singlet and headgear because it feels different when they put on a singlet and headgear, doesn't it? Whatever your goal match is, you're going to have to do it with a singlet and headgear on. So you want to practice the way you want to wrestle in a match. So really get your mindset right in practice that this is like a match and they should be dressing the same way. Singlet and headgear. When you go to the Olympic Training Center, they're wearing a singlet. You watch videos of the Russians, they're wearing singlets. You watch the Iranians, they're wearing singlets. You have to compete in practice the way you want to compete in a match. Now, before a match, what they should be doing when they're on deck, your kids should be drilling with someone. Why? Because most of these kids are wrestling 5 or 6 days a week, maybe more. And this is their pattern. When they go to practice, they drill, then they go live. Then the next day, they drill, and then they go live. Then the next day, they drill, and they go live. So take an educated guess what they should do before they go live in a match. They should drill. But usually what happens is they bounce around, they work up a sweat, even them, getting their heart rate up, that's not enough. They need to feel like they're in practice because it's getting your mind and your body ready to do the same thing you do all the time. So They should be drilling when they're on deck so it mimics the conditions in practice. And then when they go out to wrestle, they won't be as slow of a starter. They won't be as nervous because they're back in that they got their motor running before they stepped on the mat. And that's a key thing. Your wrestler needs to get their motor running before they step on the mat. That doesn't mean run sprints. Normally, these kids are not running sprints before they go live in practice. So why should they do that before a match? They should be doing the same thing. So hand fight with the partner. They should have a partner they're hand fighting with before they wrestle live in the match. So those are some tips right there that I wanted to start with. I'm happy to open up the floor for any questions. But like I said, what your kid should be focused on is effort, attitude, and aggressiveness. What are his 2 or 3 best moves on neutral, top, and bottom? That's his focus. As a parent, the best thing you could do this next month, don't focus on don't talk much about wrestling. Don't bring it up at all unless they bring it up to you. And then if they do, keep it short and sweet. Keep the mood light and fun around the house because a lot of the pressure is already very high for them. And if you're going to say anything like pertaining to wrestling, I love you and I'm proud of you no matter what. You do that, you give your kid the best chance to succeed. And then what your kid should be doing is treating practice the same as a match and treating a match the same way as they do in practice. So, like I said, I wanted to give a lot of information and value up front. So I know that's a lot. That's also why I recorded this. If any of your kids need help at all, we could absolutely help you. We have our one-on-one mindset program. We also have a 30-day mindset transformation for situations just like this where kids need to make a quick change before the end of the season. That's all stuff we could talk about at any time. Coaches have my contact information. I'm happy now to just open the floor for any questions that you have for me, however I could help you while we're all here. I think the lines are open. Wait, now the lines are open. I made it so now you can unmute yourselves. Can we give examples of how to work on the mind game year round? Yeah, so it's just like, so working on your mindset year round, they need to have a mindset coach all year round, just like they need a technical coach all year round. You know, confidence and motivation, they don't stay the same. They go up, they go down. So they need to work on that. And it's like any skill that you want to get better at. For long-term behavioral change, you need deliberate practice. So there's got to be deliberate practice. It's just like I look at it like strength training for the mind. They have to be doing their strength training on a regular basis. They have to be doing their mindset training on a regular basis. And there's just a lot of exercises to do in terms of they have to build a pre-match routine. We need to build a reset button with them with the match evaluation. There's just a lot of exercises to bulletproof their mind. I see a question here. How do you get less nervous before a match? Like I said, your focus before a match should be focusing on your effort, your attitude, and your aggressiveness. That's how you're going to be less nervous before a match. If you're focused on who you're going up against, what the significance of the match is, winning, losing, that's going to create more pressure. You're probably going to have less fun and you're not going to do as well. So don't tell yourself this is the postseason. Just focus on your effort, your attitude, your aggressiveness. And like I said, drilling is very important. Drill before you step out there on the mat. We have, as far as the cost of the program, there's all different programs we have. So I'm happy to talk about that after the call. I'm going to give you guys also my phone number, 908-337-6143. So if anyone wants to reach out after, I'm happy to talk to you about it. I see another question here. How do I keep good nutrition throughout the wrestling season? You have to have a plan. So a plan always means writing it down. I'm very big on that with mindset training. Everything we do, it has to be written down. If it's just in your head, it's likely to escape your mind. So we have to have a plan for our nutrition, a plan for our conditioning, a plan for our rest and recovery, a plan for our technique, a plan for our mindset. I guarantee most of your kids don't have it written down what their plan is for each one of those areas, but there needs to be a plan to improve technically, strength, nutrition, rest and recovery, mindset, flexibility. You know, you look at the best wrestlers, they're doing splits in all different directions. So you have to write it down. Let's see. My son often has matches against a teammate. He continues to beat my son though my son beats him in practice. How can I help him in this mental block if mental block he has, especially with state qualifiers coming up? Right. So what's happening if your son is beating a kid in practice and then losing to him in matches, or even if the score is just closer in matches, it's because mentally he's telling himself something different. Usually in practice, you're thinking about beating your partner, but you're not thinking about winning. So that's what we need to do. We need to get that focus away from winning and losing, away from the significance of the competition, and instead it should be effort, attitude, and aggressiveness. And then if your son's mind starts to drift, and it will, eventually your son's mind's going to drift, and they're going to start thinking about winning and losing or who their opponent is. They need to have a reset button. It's one of our most valuable mindset exercises. Something they do and tell themselves to release, relax, and let go. They hit their reset button, and then they get back to focusing on their two or three best moves on neutral, top, and bottom. That's all you could control. Effort, attitude, and aggressiveness. If you're on neutral, just think about your two or three best takedowns. When you're on top, just think about your two or three best turns or pinning combinations. When you're on bottom, just think of your two or three best escapes or reversals. Treat practice like a match, right? So that means wear your singlet and headgear when you're in practice, and really put yourself in that headspace. And then before wrestling in a match, make sure he's hand fighting with someone so it feels like practice. Otherwise, it's going to feel different, and your son's more likely to do worse. Okay. I'm seeing the same question also, and it framed differently. Your son freezes and becomes hesitant when he knows who he's going up against, when he knows he's going up against someone he's lost to. Again, he's changing the mental parameters. He's telling himself something different in the match than he is in practice. So it's a three-step process. Everything we do with our mindset training, first, and every kid's different. All of your kids are different from each other. So first, we have to identify what their negative mental pattern is. Two, then we have to break that negative mental pattern. And three, we need to create a new positive mental pattern. I see another question. How can I help my son with anxiety and days leading up to a match or tournament? For a parent, just lay off. Don't talk about wrestling. Keep the mood light and fun in the house. If your kid brings up wrestling, keep it short and sweet. If you're going to say anything, I love you and I'm proud of you no matter what. I'm also going to put my email address on here in case anyone needs me. Mindset at wrestlingmindset.com. I'm very happy to answer any questions. Do you have coaches that understand child psychology development, strictly 5, 6, 7 year olds? And I'm constantly trying to figure out how to ratchet down the pressure and really, yes, we could absolutely help with that. And we've worked with a lot of kids that struggle with different things: dyslexia, OCD, perfectionism, ADHD, depression, anxiety. Again, our thing, we're not we're not therapists, we're counselors, but I can say that there have been parents that reached out to me that their kid's been working with the therapist, and they open up more to us because we're wrestling specific. So that's the great thing about our mindset coaches being former wrestlers. They can relate to your kids. Your kids are much more likely to open up to someone who knows wrestling and has been in their shoes before. So yeah, we could help them with all that. In fact, we just had a dad say that his kid no longer goes to therapy. The kid's a wrestler. He was going to a therapist and us as mindset coaches. And he said, actually, his mindset coach has replaced his therapy. So again, for me, what could make me happier that these kids are not only improving on the mat. Again, I love wrestling. I want to see your kids win more and wrestle better. But it gets me excited to know that it's helping them in their life. That's the great thing. Having a mentor, that's just huge. And a lot of times just hearing it from someone other than their coach and other than their parents, because a lot of these kids just need someone to talk to. They need someone to open up to about their doubts, their fears, their insecurities. And that's where we come in, talking to these kids on the phone. Your son freeze. I see another question. Your son freezing, becoming hesitant when they're wrestling an opponent they know and they've lost to before. His style. Oh, I saw that. Yep. Same thing. Treating it all the same. What do you recommend for resetting in a tournament after a loss? Yes, we have a visualization cue. You have an imaginary black box, and you throw all the negativity into the imaginary black box, and you don't open it until after the tournament. So the idea is you don't want to be evaluating your performance at a tournament. What you want to do is throw that into an imaginary black box, and then you evaluate after the tournament's over. What your kid should do in between rounds is drill with a partner, get that good feel back, get that good bounce in the step back, block out everything that happened before, hit your reset button, and then start over again. I see right here. My kid was hurt during his regional tournament and had to medically forfeit his matches. He had a lot of teammates tell him he was supposed to be the first one. He took it super hard and still is. How do we get him to be in the right mindset to have him come back stronger his senior year? Yeah, so we'd have to actually know exactly what your kid was telling himself. So I know each kid is different. I try to give you guys these answers, but the hard thing is, just like no two fingers on your hand are the same, no two kids are the same. So I could give you great general information, but to find out specifically what is wrong with your kid, why are they underperforming? Why are they losing to guys they should beat? It's like a mechanic. You have to get under the hood of the car. If I don't look under the hood, I can't see what's the problem with your car. So it's the same thing with mindset. Everything I've given you will help, will absolutely help. This general information is going to help everyone, but each kid responds a little bit differently. There's no cookie cutter answers. We have to see what's going on with them. I hope that helps. Like I said, as a parent, do everything you can to both verbally and non-verbally reinforce effort, attitude, and aggressiveness. Don't talk about winning or losing or results or outcomes at home. And this is true for school as well. Focus predominantly on reinforcing. You have to verbally and non-verbally. It's both. Your body language has to match your words, but verbally and non-verbally reinforce when they have a great effort, attitude, or aggressiveness. If you do that as a parent, your kid's gonna be having more fun. They're gonna be wrestling better, no doubt about it. It just takes some time, like anything else. If we want to have long-term behavioral change, we need to have deliberate practice. And parents who coach their kids, I see this question too. 9 out of 10 times, you're better off just being dad. Let the other coaches take your kids. When in doubt, let the other coaches give the tips. As a parent, you want to be the dad. And I've had kids and their parents break down, hugging each other when we finally had that moment of truth where we looked at the dad, looked at the kid and say, do you want him to be coach or do you want him to be dad? And the kid just crying like, I want him to be dad, and like hugging and crying and everything. So we had that breakthrough moment. That's the great thing about mindset, that when there's a breakthrough, it happens quick. Change happens quick. All right, I see 30 seconds left. I'm happy to stick around. I'll send you guys I'll send Jim and Jody another link. If you guys want to jump back on, we could talk more. I'm happy to do it. Like I said, I want to give you guys as much value as I can.